Hey, Chicago, what do you say? It's the CHGO Cubs Podcast presented by DraftKings, America's top-rated sportsbook. Download the app, use the promo code CHGO when you sign up. Oh, we got a full panel today. We're five wide. Greg Huss, prospect expert, down in the corner. He's got his own screen. That's how important he is to our show. Ryan Herrera, Corey Freedman, Cody Delmendo. I'm Luke Stuckmeyer. We've got some CHGO shirts. We got some obvious shirts going. We've got the last place Cubs to talk about. Sorry, didn't want to start that way, but that's the way it is. Obviously, we're going to talk prospects because Greg is here. And we should start out by saying, Greg, first of all, Brennan said he loves you, and he's disappointed he's not here.
Yeah, well, he's never here. So.
I'll just suck it up and have you guys. It's all good.
So let's get right to it because, first of all, when the team is in last place, and although first place isn't that far away, people start thinking about the future. Ways to either A, fix the current team, or B, fix the future team. So a name that keeps popping up, our guy Gary Ross in the chat is here every day. Gary, just to get you, and the Discord, just to get Gary off my back, tell me about Jake Slaughter. Who is he? What can he do well?
Jake Slaughter is, well, first of all, I came prepared with all my Nick Madrigal content, so I don't know why you guys are not asking me about that first. No, Jake Slaughter
especially
is
from Corey.
He, honestly, if not for Matt Mervis and what he has done over the past year and a half now, we would be talking a whole lot more about Jake Slaughter and the come up that he's had from not being assigned to an affiliate, to a full season affiliate last year out the gate, to now he's up in AAA Iowa doing really, really well. I know he has a double in today's game that's going on right now for Iowa. Plays second base, plays some third base. Really, I think he's a fan favorite because he's scrappy as hell. Like we love the scrappy, the gritty type guys, and Jake Slaughter is definitely one of those dudes. But he's just been mashing for the last year and a half. Like I said, he's a little bit older for a traditional prospect. I think he's 26, 27. But he's been really good with the bat.
Yeah, I mean, Justin Steele's 27 too. Unless the guy's 40, I don't care what his age is if he can play baseball. Is he good enough to come in and A, be the utility guy the Cubs have been looking for kind of all season around the infield? Or B, is he the guy that could be good enough to be a long-term solution at third base? Is he that quality of a prospect, or is he a guy that you're just looking for to have available and maybe he gets some playing time and prove something?
I think you're dreaming on a scenario where he can be a good bench bat, where he can be that utility guy. I think that's the best, like the peak outcome from Jake Slaughter is that bench utility type player. He can play some second, third. You could probably put him in the outfield and he'd be just fine, really. I don't think that you're looking at Jake Slaughter as the answer to third base. I don't think that having Jake Slaughter in the system keeps you from going out and bidding for Matt Chapman in the offseason or whatever that might be. I'd much rather see Chris Morel be as your starting third baseman than counting on a guy like Jake Slaughter. But I don't want him not being the answer at third base to take away from the fact that he could be a decent bench guy. And for that position, it seems like it's all about like being able to buy in, right? Nick Madrigal, I joke about him, but like he was a guy who was a first round draft pick and came up with the White Sox as a heralded prospect and stuff like that. It's tough to transition into being like a bench bat, a bench guy that's playing 2 or 3 times a week, maybe, you know? So it's can Jake Slaughter buy into that? And I think that he might be able to. He's got, like I mentioned, he's that scrappy guy, guys that are doing that or maybe transition to the bench a little bit better.
You mentioned like the how Morel, you think that he could play a better third base than Slaughter. You watched Morel while he was down there. Why haven't the Cubs given him an opportunity at third base at all?
They didn't give him a chance at third base when he was in Iowa. He was playing the outfield there too. So I don't know. Honestly, I don't have an answer for that. I don't think necessarily that Christopher Morel is absolutely a better defensive third baseman than Jake Slaughter, but Christopher Morel clearly has way more upside than what we can see from Jake Slaughter. That's not even a knock on Slaughter at all. It's just like we know the upside with Morel. So I'd rather get him in. But I've been on record saying like I prefer Morel as a utility guy too, more of like a playing almost every day utility guy, less of a bench bat utility guy. There's two differences between those two things, obviously, but
I got you.
yeah, I don't know. I don't know why there was the hesitancy to play him at third base during his time in Iowa.
I want to go back to Morel. You mentioned him in the first answer, and obviously just right now. With him and with Mervis coming up, and I think we all agreed, like, when they finally pulled those levers, like, it was time for the Cubs to do that, time to see what these guys have at the big league level. Mervis hasn't, Morel obviously had that electric first, 12, 13 games, whatever it was. Matt Mervis hasn't really had that, had a little bit of, like, a boost for a few games there, but now over the last week, like, both have struggled, especially when Morel came in the game as a bench bat yesterday, struck out. Mervis just hasn't really figured it out yet. I'm just curious, like, your overall, like, those two guys specifically, but in general, just seeing prospects that are mashing at the AAA level when they come up, just how difficult is that transition, even for guys that are really exciting and are really killing it at that level?
Yeah, I feel like I don't know this for sure, but like thinking off the top of my head now, I feel like right now feels like the most difficult time, the biggest transition from AAA into the major leagues, and I think that because they waited to call up Matt Mervis, like it pisses me off. They waited until when it was absolutely necessary to call up Matt Mervis to actually give him the call, because now he gets called up and we're dying on him to contribute to the big league team, right? Like it feels way more necessary. He's supposed to be the guy that kind of injects some life into this lineup. That's not fair to him, dude. Like that is not fair to a guy that has yet to experience the major league level, right? So whether that is starting off the year on the opening day roster or getting some time on the major league roster at the end of last year, like that could have been his adjustment period. Is kind of getting acclimated to the major league squad and major league pitching and stuff like that, taking his lumps and then getting used to it and falling into more comfort, I guess, because right now we're experiencing like he can't come up and absolutely mash right away. And I think the fans were actually better than I expected in terms of like not expecting too much from Mervis right away, which I was shocked. I thought that like he would come up and fans would lose their freaking minds if he didn't like produce 1,000 OPS plus or more than a 1,000 OPS right out the gate, So I'm pleasantly surprised with that, I guess. But like you can't expect too much from that,
Yeah, I think that's one of the traps that a lot of people fall in. Is just like they see the numbers at AAA and then like just kind of forget how tough that transition to the big leagues really is. Like those numbers in AAA, the good ones don't really translate, especially not right away. Morel's a little bit of a different story, but yeah.
Greg, you kind of answered a question that I was thinking in my head for you is what is, in your mind, what's the ideal way to develop and bring up a prospect? Because we see the Mervis situation. We've seen Morel come up, and my knock on what they've done with Morel is sort of everybody wants him to be Ben Zobrist, and I don't think defensively he's Ben Zobrist at any of those positions. So I would prefer to see them put him at DH and one position. I know they need a utility guy, but if the guy's not that player and you're still trying to develop him because he's in his low 20s, to me, that doesn't seem like the right way to develop him. So for you, what's the right way to develop a prospect and get them to be the major league player you want them to be?
Yeah. I'll cop out a little bit with this answer and say that it depends player to player, right? I think that honestly we haven't seen it come to light at the major league team yet, but I think that this development staff throughout the minor leagues is really good about catering development paths and catering their styles to the individual player. I've talked with a few different guys on the coaching staff down at the lower levels, and like they're very careful about like the way in which they talk to certain players, when they talk to them, how they talk to them, how many things they're working on simultaneously, like all of that stuff. Like they're very, very careful about that. I think that's important because like not every player plays the same way physically. Not every player is the same between the ears. It depends on the guy. So I think with a guy like Matt Mervis, right? I think it does make sense to call him up, let him take his lumps, let him get used to what it's looking like at the major league level, and then get better. Versus Christopher Morel, it might have been better to send him back to start him in Iowa to begin the year and absolutely take off and perform super, super well and then ride that hot streak into the major league call up. You know what I mean? I think it just depends on the player. And honestly, with Mervis and Morel, while we're talking about these two guys, I think they've actually done a pretty decent job of like handling that and catering it to the specific player. Like it's still to be determined, I guess, in the long run. But it feels like they've treated each of those guys differently, and it might line up with the way that they are as a person and a baseball player. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Can I ask about Cade Horton yet, or
Yeah,
do we want to talk about?
Yes.
We can keep talking about the major league guys that have come up and stuff, but we got a guy who struck out 9 people last night, so I need to hear Greg's thoughts on this.
Dude, yeah.
That's it. That's all you gotta say.
He's glowing. Greg is glowing.
That's the next obvious shirt.
You got a question, or do you want
Yeah.
me to just go on and on and on about Cade Horton? Because I can do that for sure.
Yeah, wax poetic about Cade Horton.
All right, man. So what we saw from Cade Horton last night with the 9 strikeouts is, I mean, I think that we're seeing a little bit different picture than what we saw with Cade Horton to begin this season, where to begin the season, he was down in Myrtle Beach. He was in single A, very clearly better than every single hitter he was going up against. Like it wasn't even close, really. He was just throwing fastballs down the middle. The slider he would throw out of the zone, and that's all he needed to do, right? That was enough to get the job done at single A. He came up to South Bend. He got promoted up to high A, and since he got called up, he is just like he struggled in his first game or so, and he just got it really figured out now. He's still got the fastball where he's living on the edges a little bit more. The slider's still pretty good, but he's introduced this new curveball, and that's what's kind of piqued my interest is the curveball that he's been throwing more, a lot more like vertical downward movement on the curveball, and that's what's been getting a lot of swings and misses in these past few starts. So I think that it's always a point of conversation with every single pitching prospect, but the ability to like differentiate between the movement on the slider and the movement on the curveball is super, super important. And that's going to be important for Cade as it continues, because we know how good the slider is. Like that's why he was drafted where he was, because he came out of nowhere with that slider.
Yeah.
So being able to continue to incorporate that with horizontal movement, with the curveball, with downward movement is super, super important. I think he's looked terrific. Let's not get carried away and say he's ready for Double A yet. Might he get a cup of coffee in Double A at the end of the year? Yeah, I think that's definitely possible, especially because the way that Cubs tend to do that in the minor league system, like to get them a cup of coffee with the next affiliate they'll be at in the next year. So spending September in Tennessee, I don't think that's ridiculous to assume that.
What do you think his like estimated time to one day be at beautiful historic Wrigley Field, based off the rise as fast as it's already begun? I know when he was drafted, it kind of got. I saw a lot of tweets from the smart people that I'm not, saying like 2 years in the minors, like kind of like how we've seen Jordan Wicks. So I do think we might see him eventually this year, and he's been in the minors for a couple of years, right? So is 2025 still more like his likely debut?
I think that's fair. I think to shoot around early 2025. I think that Brian Smith posted on Twitter or on one of his articles over at Bleacher Nation recently, describing Cade as closer to a high school draft pick than a 3-year college draft pick.
Wow.
And that's like super important because he did go to Oklahoma. He is a college guy, but like he didn't really pitch in Oklahoma, and he definitely didn't pitch well in Oklahoma until the College World Series rolled around. So in terms of development, like it's associating him with a high school draft pick is way like more on brand, I guess, is way more spot on. But yeah, I think the 2025 timeline for Cade Horton is pretty good. We got to remember that like, because he's tearing it up, like still be patient with him. Like he's going to reach the upper levels of the minors, and he's going to struggle. Like there's going to be parts like times where he does struggle, because there's more in single A especially, but even intermixed within high A a little bit. There's more like guys that he saw during his time in college baseball, in the SEC, in the Big 12, in ACC. Like there's more of those guys in the lower levels, the minors. And so when you get up to Double A and Triple A, that's when you see like the really special players, regardless of if they make the big leagues or not. Like there's a big separator between Double A and high A baseball. So he's going to struggle. He's going to hit some struggles once he reaches Double A and Triple A. But yeah, I think I don't know. 2025 seems about right.
Yeah, our friend Niran in the chat had said that something like, of course he's going to be good. He was in the College World Series last year. He's going to be good at high A or something like that. And so I guess my question is based off that, knowing struggles will eventually come. Right? I think we can safely assume that for anyone in the minor leagues. But for a guy who didn't pitch much in college, like was pretty much just last year, I believe, and then didn't make his pro debut until this season. I don't know, in your mind, as someone that watches prospects all the time, how impressive and like kind of unusual is it to see a guy that, again, hasn't pitched as much already kind of doing what he's done, going into high A and striking out a bunch of people?
Yeah, he's a unique situation just because of the Tommy John, and because of how he developed in college. Like, this isn't a normal guy that you see in the College World Series. Like, this is not a typical college arm being drafted, like I said, So it's unique in a lot of ways, and I can't really associate with another. Like, I don't know. I can't remember a situation like this happening with a Cubs draft pick recently. Now, you look at a guy like Jackson Ferris, who's debuted in low A. He was the Cubs' second-round draft pick last year. The Cubs saved some money on Cade Horton so they could go and draft Jackson Ferris out of high school. And Jackson Ferris looks incredible. Like, Jackson Ferris, like, I could go on and on about Jackson Ferris almost as much as Cade Horton here. I think that Jackson Ferris has kind of cemented himself as the fourth best pitching prospect in the system, behind the big three of Ben Brown, Cade Horton, and Jordan Wicks. I think it's those three very clearly, whatever order you want to put those three guys in. And then number 4 is clearly Jackson Ferris in my eyes. And I listen to arguments that he's in the top 3 too. That's more of a special circumstance, right? Where Jackson Ferris was drafted last year, and we're already seeing him. We saw him in May up in full season ball. Like, I know it's a little different since they've cut the short season ball a few years ago in 2020. But like that is not normal at all. Seeing a guy like Jackson Ferris come up and looking the way he does as a high school draft pick less than a year after he was selected.
Greg, your name is Jackson Ferris. You got a good pitcher's name. So this guy's going to shove one day at beautiful historic Wrigley Field. I'm already convinced.
It is a sweet name. I'm concerned, by the way, about Justin Steele, which we're going to talk about later in the podcast. Stayed back, didn't travel with the Cubs, in an MRI on his elbow today. But, Greg, if I play gloom and doom in my head, and I think at least he's going to miss the next start. Wesneski did a nice job yesterday coming in. He's a guy that went down briefly, has come back. We thought he was going to be a reliever and threw a lot of pitches yesterday. Is Ben Brown at a place where if Steele missed at least one start, Ben Brown could come up and get his first look at the majors? Is it too soon to bring up Ben Brown?
No, I don't think it's too soon. I think that Ben Brown could come up, hold his own, especially if they're not if Steele goes on the IL. They don't want Wesneski taking that rotation slot. I'd love to see Ben Brown called up and be in that rotation slot for a fairly extended period of time, right? I think that he's prepared for that. He looks pretty damn good, dude. Like, he looks really good. And it's not just a matter of the pre-tacked baseballs that were in AA Tennessee. Like, he is looking really good for Iowa. I think he can come up and hold his own. He has 2 plus pitches. Like, the breaking ball and his fastball are both really, really good. Yeah, man, I think he can come up and hold his own for sure. It's going to be interesting to see how the pitching staff gets handled at the major league level as we kind of progress through the year, because I'm sure they don't want Ben Brown throwing 180 innings this year. I'm sure they feel the same way about Wesneski. And you could even say the same about Caleb Killian down in AAA right now, right? So, like, it's balancing those number of innings with some guys that were recently converted to the bullpen that we're seeing. Like, we see Daniel Palencia thrown out of the bullpen. He's going 1 inning at a time for Iowa right now, but he's a converted starter as of like a month ago. Luke Little is another guy that we could see in the major leagues. So those are like guys that will not be used as starters in the big leagues, but they could balance some. Like, if Ben Brown's going consistently 4 innings, instead, like, they're only letting him go 4 innings, then maybe you have Palencia going 2 innings, and like consistently doing that, so you're not eating as many innings out of some of these young guys.
Interesting.
Good to hear.
One of the parts of the team that gets people the most riled up, Cubs fans the most irate, has been the bullpen this season. And Gary's in the chat asking about Cam Sanders or Daniel Palencia. Cody Hoyer's another guy who's nearing the end of his rehab, very close to coming back up to help the team. So those three guys specifically, what have you seen from them at AAA, especially Cody in his rehab assignment? But what have you seen from them? What do you think are maybe the timelines for them, and for Sanders and Palencia specifically? What do they have left to do at AAA before they kind of get that call? Because I know Daniel Palencia just transitioned, and Sanders has kind of been on the radar since even last season. So what do those guys have to do specifically?
Sanders needs to stop walking guys. It seems pretty clear with Cam Sanders on. Like, he might be the most straightforward of the bunch. Well, Cody Hoyer, it's when he's healthy, when he's good. That could be any time here soon.
Yeah.
That we see Cody Hoyer make his way up to the big. So he's probably the most straightforward. Besides that, Cam Sanders is the second most straightforward. If he stops walking like half the guys he sees, then he will be up in Chicago, right? Like, the stuff is really good. He can generate strikeouts. He has three really good offerings, in my opinion, that he can use out of the bullpen. I think we can see Cam if he stops walking guys. There's three other names. We already mentioned Daniel Palencia and Luke Little, two guys that were converted to the pen. I think the timeline on them is like second half of the year that we could see them in Chicago. But I think they both could absolutely be there in Chicago this year. And then the third guy that I think is ready right now, and he's an actual prospect, is Bailey Horn. Bailey Horn has been terrific, like really, really good for Iowa. He's a lefty, which is fun. He's a lefty. He's got a fastball that rides up there mid. I think it's touching 97 on the gun. But the slider, the sweeper slider is very, very good. He's got a curveball to go with it. Bailey Horn is like my guy. I really like Bailey Horn quite a bit. I think that we could see him soon. I think once different experiments are done with some of these major league bullpen arms, veteran guys, I think once they cut bait on them officially, I think Bailey Horn, we will see him up in Chicago soon.
We did have a super chat earlier that was for Greg asking if you can speak on Furious Jeff speaking on BJ Murray, who is currently sporting a 911 OPS for Tennessee.
Yeah, BJ Murray has been. He probably will take home the Cubs minor league hitter of the month in May once that's announced. Either him or Chase Strumpf. They both had phenomenal months of May. BJ Murray has gone from a guy that we were kind of dreaming on, like true prospect nerds like me were dreaming on, to kind of take off a little bit. So now he's like, I feel like I saw him everywhere being mentioned on Twitter. So we talked about on our podcast on Cubs on Deck this past week, me and Brian talked about some underrated prospects in the system. And when we sought out fans and asked who they thought were the most underrated guys in the system, BJ Murray was mentioned the most. And I laughed at that a little bit because, like, when I as a prospect guy hop on Twitter, that's all I see is BJ Murray everywhere. So I don't know how a guy that's everywhere can be that underrated, but I think he's firmly planted himself as a top 30 prospect in the system for sure. This is a little bit of a deeper cut, I guess, but I associate what he's doing this year a lot with what we saw from a guy named Nelson Maldonado last year, where Maldonado, like BJ Murray, was in AA Tennessee and absolutely tearing it up. And then Maldonado last year got called up to Iowa and really struggled. The thing with Maldonado was his carrying tool was that he hit the crap out of the ball. His hit tool was very, very good. BJ Murray's carrying tool is the fact that he puts together some of the best at-bats in the system. He walks a ton. His strikeout rate is not too bad. He just works counts really, really well. The problem with Murray is if he gets called up to Iowa and that walk rate goes from 19%, which is outrageously high right now, even down to 11%, 10, 11%, he doesn't bring the same value that he once did. But I would much rather bank on that trait than a hit tool trait, right? I'd much rather bank on a guy who can generate really good at bats. He's been really damn good. The power is coming around, which is terrific. I think he looks pretty decent over at third base, which coming into the year, he was a guy who really just did not have a position at all. Him being able to man third base is really, really important. Him showing off some power is important. I like BJ Murray a lot. I think that it's about time for him to go up to AAA Iowa. Honestly, it might coincide with a Jake Slaughter call up to the big leagues. because that leaves third base open for BJ Murray to go up to Iowa. So I've liked what I've seen. It's just I'm cautiously optimistic with BJ Murray.
Not to go back to major league guys, but Miguel Amaya has been in Iowa for a little bit, and
2 for 2 today.
Craig Brindle in the chat says that he's 2 for 2 with 2 RBIs and a walk so far today. So it's not the first day where I've seen him having good days in Iowa. And obviously there's been a lot of complaints about Tucker Barnhart as far as the offense goes. And I think he really did pleasantly surprise a lot of us in the emergency situation when he got called up, because coming into the year, I did not see him being on the Cubs, at least until the second half of the year. So my question is how many – what would you guess how many more at-bats the Cubs want him to get at that level? Because I was looking at the other day, I think AA and AAA combined, he's just a little over 100 for the year. And so whenever he was on the major league team, you could see he was a little overmatched in some at-bats, in my opinion. So in your opinion, how many more do you think he needs at Iowa for him to get back to the Cubs?
I don't know an exact number. I just know that he has gone the past few years. He has gotten very, very few at bats. So if you're calling him up to the major leagues, you're calling him up to be the starting catcher in Chicago. Like it's not him splitting time with Yan Gomes. It's not him splitting time with Tucker Barnhart. It's him as a starting catcher. So Yan Gomes has to go down with an injury. Or they just I don't see it's a scenario where Tucker Barnhart goes away and then they call up Miguel Amaya. I mean, he needs to get as many ABs as humanly possible, and I think that he can do that in Iowa. I don't know that he can do that in the big leagues, and I know that he looked really good and he's looked tremendous in Iowa. It's less about like how he looks; it's more about just like getting the constant reps, because he's just missed so many at bats because of injury the past few years. So. Like that's not a knock on his development at all, because you look at it, like he's still, for a catcher, he's still a young guy and like well ahead of pace for like when a catcher typically debuts in the major leagues. I mean, like unless you're Joe Mauer or Buster Posey, like you're not debuting in like your younger 20s in the big leagues. So he's still way ahead of schedule as far as that goes. I just want to see him just, as long as he can get consistent at bats, that's what's like the most important for Miguel Amaya. I think at this point, like he has submitted himself as like a top 10 prospect in the Cubs system again, which is coming into the year, he was not close to that. I think that he was at least like, I think between 20 and 30 range in terms of prospect rankings.
Yeah.
Just because we didn't know how he would return from that injury. Returning from Tommy John as a catcher is not an easy thing to ask, So for him to be a top 10 prospect in the system, I think if he continues doing this in Iowa and stays as a prospect, I think by the end of the year, you're talking about a guy that's like flirting with like top 100s again, because we know he had the pedigree as being a top 100 guy in the past. So like, why can't he do that again at the end of this year if he continues to succeed?
Yeah, I also think the Barnhart decision, I think the Cubs really value just the catcher depth in the system. I mean, Bryce Wyndham just came back a couple weeks ago from injury. Yep. Dom Nunez is hurt right now, if I'm not mistaken. They have a fourth catcher down there. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. But he's young. I know that. He's like barely older than I am. Yeah, Jake Washer, barely older than I am. And obviously, like you said, Amaya, very few at-bats. Very few at-bats, has had his share of injuries. I do tend to think that, like, especially with this more focus on the soft factors, defensive catcher stuff, that they really value the depth. I mean, whatever level of depth that having Tucker Barnhart brings. The bat is obviously not there. I mean, Corey, is he still below John Lester's WRC plus from 2019?
Oh yeah,
I would think so.
Now he's not alone in that. I have to check. I think Miles is with him, so I don't want it to seem like I'm just dragging Tucker down there.
Yeah, so the bat's not there, obviously, but I do think the Tucker Barnhart decision does hinge on how they feel about the catching depth, regardless of Amaya or not.
I think that Amaya is directly related to Yan Gomes. I think Tucker Barnhart is like his decision is related to another, like Bryce Wyndham or something like that. I don't see the Cubs trotting out Yan Gomes and Miguel Amaya as their two catchers. I just don't think it makes sense for his development. I don't think it makes sense for the big league squad right now. I don't see that happening, I guess.
Yeah.
Greg, I know you've got to run, but I want to ask one more question. I hate to end this on a negative note, but that's what I do.
Buzzkill.
What the heck is going on with Brennan Davis? Because if you just look at the box scores and the numbers, you'd think, well, something's not right. So what's going on with him?
Yeah, so I wrote something over at Northside Bound last week about Brennan Davis and kind of how he relates in terms of StatCast numbers to the major league level, right? We see the StatCast numbers thrown around there all the time with major leaguers. We are seeing StatCast numbers in AAA now, which is like so much fun for me as a nerd, as a stat nerd, as a prospect nerd. Love it. But with Brennan Davis, it's so much different than what we've seen from him in the past, where he is striking out a very few amount of times, and he's not chasing balls. So like coming into this year, besides the health, one of the biggest concerns we had with Brennan Davis was his ability to make contact with fastballs that are up and in, and his inability to make contact with sliders that are out of the zone, right? He would chase the sliders out of the zone a lot. So what we're seeing this year from him is that he's doing neither of those things. He's making contact at a much better rate on those fastballs and on breaking balls, and he's laying off those sliders out of the zone way more. So that's the positive. I've gone this far without saying the fact that his slash line is really ugly, right? The numbers the production this year is just not very good. But we're seeing it's very clear to me that when we talk about development not being linear, I think we associate that with a guy like Ian Happ, right? Where he came up to the big leagues, he needed to go through some adjustments and he went back down and then came back up. Or we look at a guy like David Bodie, who was an organizational type guy forever in the minors until he broke out. When we say development isn't linear, it doesn't always have to be associated with a guy like that. It could be like Brennan Davis, where hey, he's working on that chase rate right now. That's what he's working on, number one. And then once he gets that figured out, which he's showing he does have the ability to do that, he can then reincorporate that power back into the mix, because we know he has that athleticism. We know he has the raw power. So it's just working on one or two things at a time before you're ready to merge them all into one complete player. So I'm not too awful worried. Obviously, I want to see the production there. I think that we need to see numbers at some point, but at least there is some sort of light in this tunnel. You know what I mean? I don't think what we're seeing from him is the worst thing that could ever happen. I'm happy that he's healthy. I'm happy that he's improved on some elements of his game. I just want him to now produce at the level that I know he can.
Greg Huss, we love you. We love you, Greg Huss, even more than even Brendan does. Greg Huss, you can read his work at Northside Bound, and you can also follow him on Twitter, Out of the Vines. Hope to have him on sometime very soon again.
Hell yeah.
Greg, so we appreciate it. We'll see you soon, and keep us posted. If we need to know about somebody, just shoot us a message. Just shoot us a message.
I got you. I'll let you guys know. I appreciate it.
Just get me all hyped up. I'm ready to be heard again. Let's do it.
You know what I do best. Yep.
Thanks, Greg. Have a great weekend.
Man. Thanks, Greg.
Take care, guys.
Guys, I want to tell you about Pins and Aces. I'm getting ready for the weekend with Pins and Aces, the official golf apparel partner of ALLCITY and CHGO. We love our Pins and Aces gear. Tons of compliments on and off the course. They are a family-owned golf and apparel business. They make amazing polos, hats, golf bags, even our favorite beer sleeve, an innovative product that allows you to store 7 beers right inside your golf bag, keeping them cold the whole round. Check out pinsandaces.com. Use the code CHGO to receive 15% off your first order and free shipping. That's pinsandaces.com. Cody's got one. Check it out. That's one of the lids.
Yeah, the hats are real comfortable, and they're
breathable, they look.
Yeah, it doesn't make me super sweaty, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it's breathable. It lets a little air through.
Because some of my other hats, especially on a day like today, I'll just sweat because I'm a bigger dude and I don't know how to explain it. The units out there know, man. You understand what I'm putting down. And so these hats help with that. So
sure.
Very nice stuff. And you wear your Pins and Aces gear, and then while you're online, you also go ahead, get yourself a diehard membership to CHGO.
Very important.
$79.99 a year or $667 a month. You get the free shirt from our dope merch locker when you sign up.
You can
3
match
of those
with
beauties
Cody
right here. You can choose from.
Look at
that.
I need to get me a CHGO shirt.
We didn't get the memo. I didn't know it was hockey day.
Yeah, apparently.
Well, again,
Cody and I coordinate.
Again, I'm wearing pink shorts, and so the only thing that really goes well with pink is black. at least with the shoes that I wear. It's all about the vibes.
I
right?
do think that's one of our better shirts, though.
Yeah, this one.
Of the hockey ones, that one's my favorite.
I think I look pretty good. Yeah,
I ended up taking advantage of our Memorial Day weekend sale.
So did I.
Got a couple baseball tees coming in on top of. I got the new Bears shirt as well. So, yeah,
I got the new gray Northside Cubs one.
Yeah,
coming.
It's coming.
You get a free shirt when you sign up. Plus, every year after that, you get one too. 20% off merch always. 20% off all events. Die Hard only Discord, and of course, the prestigious Die Hard card, which, again, feel free to throw it anywhere in the world, throw it down, and people know you're serious.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's how you let people know you're serious. You throw that down, that's like throwing down one of those gold cards from one of the credit card companies that only, like, you know, the few people have. Throw that Die Hard card, that's like throwing a Trump card over the top. Not Donald Trump, a Trump card. Not to get political.
This show political? No.
No.
Yeah, no. It's
We don't ever get political. Anyways, Die Hard card. It'll impress people, trust me. Maybe you got a high school reunion you got to go back to.
Yeah, make sure you get that Die Hard account. Tell your friends, tell your neighbors, tell your parents, siblings, anyone that you know. Make sure to let them know.
If you become a diehard, then you can just be in the CHGO Cubs Discord as well. Like, it's always popping in there. I don't get to be in there as much as I want just because I have so many things going on.
I still have to get Luke to
Yeah,
figure out
I'm
how
getting
to
in
do
At
it.
least I'm there. Like, I'm
there.
reading the stuff.
The Cubs get back to 500. Luke will download Discord.
Well, I've had to distance myself from Gary a little bit. Getting a little aggressive.
We get
No, I'm
100
kidding,
likes on
Gary.
the show today.
I love you, Gary. See,
Luke
we
will
found
join
out
me.
about Slaughter,
Well, the
didn't we?
Discord
First
is-
question. Slaughter.
The Discord is the reason that I met up with Matt Gregory last weekend or last Friday.
Oh, yeah. How'd that go? I never heard.
We met. I met up with him at Murphy's with his friend, and then there's another person that's from the Discord. I forgot their handle, but yeah, they were wearing a CHGO Skyline shirt.
Nice.
And Matt was wearing like Cubs gear because he went to the game. It was the day the Cubs just got absolutely brutally destroyed by the Reds, I believe, but or the Mets, whatever. It all mixes in. But yeah, we had a beer there, and then honestly, I hadn't ate anything all day, so then I went with him to Small Cheval and got a burger.
Yeah, nice. I saw a picture of Gary at the game the other day.
Gary was
who
there.
also bought a
Brags,
Northside
right?
and Ivy shirt. Thank you, Gary.
Nice, well done.
Who else was there?
Braggs, I want to
Braggs,
say.
Oh, Braggs was in it. Yeah.
Yeah. I was across the street. I was celebrating a friend's birthday. I was at Smoke Daddy. And so I watched the game, honestly, on the big board
Nice.
in Gallagher Way from Smoke Daddy across the street.
Nice.
So we're waiting to hear what's going on with Justin Steele. He leaves after 3 innings, and it's his elbow, we believe. They call it forearm tightness, usually associated with the elbow. Here's a guy who had Tommy John in 2017 on that elbow. My question for you is, not knowing the results yet, did the Cubs handle his situation correctly in your mind? Not knowing all the facts, was it handled correctly the way they took him out of the game? What do you think?
I'll let you guys go first because I think you're all, especially Corey, because I don't really have much of an opinion.
Especially Brendan, but he's
Brendan,
I genuinely
on a roof
I
somewhere.
generally don't really have much of an opinion yet because
I-
if Justin Steele himself legitimately said it was precautionary, then like I'll believe him until we get more news.
Yeah, I mean, we obviously have to see, and this is one of those situations where I'm not talking to Justin Steele. I'm not in the clubhouse.
Right.
Of course, there is plenty that we don't know. I'm also not a doctor, right?
But you play one on
Brendan is a
YouTube.
Oh,
doctor.
Brendan's the doctor.
Yeah, I sometimes play one on TV, but not in a while. My thing, though, like, and you and I talked about this yesterday, Luke, like, the information that we saw and that we have was that Ross and the trainer saw something they didn't like that warranted them making the trip to the mound, right? When you see a guy shaking the arm, right? Never good.
No,
right?
I went back and
Almost
watched it last night.
Always
you could see
bad.
what was going on.
Could you?
And if they saw it and they went out there, we know who Justin Steele is, right? He's a gamer.
Yep.
He wants to push through it. I don't fault players for that, right? I don't expect them to necessarily be honest. They're competitors, right? They're in the heat of the moment. He wants to compete. That's the type of guy he is. That's what's gotten him to this point and the success that he's having. This is just one of those things where he is extremely valuable to this team. He is extremely valuable to this franchise. If they felt like there was something to warrant going out there, they saw something from the dugout, you have to be the, for lack of better phrase, like the cliche, like you have to be the adult in the room. And
have to be the guardian.
You have to be the guardian. That's what they're there for, right? Justin wants to pitch.
Yeah.
He doesn't, unless he is in so much pain, he is just not the type of guy that's going to say, yeah, I'm done for the day. Like, let's not risk it. You have to be the people that say, hey, your longevity, your career, your arm, too valuable to you, this franchise, this team. This isn't the World Series. Let's get Hayden in there. Come out today. We'll check it out. But again, of course, I'm not in the conversations. I don't know. It's easy to say, as I'm watching on my TV, but it's just one of those things where guys get paid a lot of money to manage the team, protect the team, take care of the team. If they saw something, they have to, I think, step in and prevent it from getting worse. Because, you see it in the chat. The discussion that people are having, the worry that we have in terms of worst-case scenario, we'll never know if that would have been prevented had they taken him out when they made that trip, right? Maybe if he's hurt, he's already hurt. That's the other thing, right? Maybe it doesn't make a difference. But what if it would have, right? That's what they're there for.
He came out, and they had one out in the first. It was so – when I went back and watched it, it's so subtle. JD didn't notice in the broadcast. All of a sudden, everybody was like, oh, David Ross is coming out. Even Steele was like kind of caught off guard. It looks as though Ross is the one who notices that he's clenching and squeezing his
I'm sure Ross has seen that.
Trying to flex it. And somehow he saw it.
Right? Like
and he gave one just like shoulder shake. But when I watched it, I thought, well, that could have he was just adjusting his jersey.
Yeah.
Ross saw something. And clearly, Steele tells him whatever he wants to hear because Ross walks away, all right, go get him. The quote from Steele after the game as it tightened up on me was kind of throbbing a little bit, but obviously want to keep competing and pitching. That's what you're talking about, Corey. When I hear the word throbbing, I asked multiple people last night, and this is not to set panic into the system or into Twitter. I'm saying ask multiple people with lots of experience in the big leagues. You ever hear of throbbing in an elbow ever turn into something good? No. Mm-hmm. No. Yeah. So that concerns me. That he didn't tell his manager the truth.
Yeah, which is
but it's understandable. But then
you
got, like Corey said, I do believe there's something to be said for you got to know the guy you're talking to too. So those next two batters scare me.
Well, and so I think that's a good point. As far as like Justin's sort of role in the decision, like
it's not one person's fault if he's hurt.
Because we've talked to David Ross in the past, multiple times, just about this day and age. The baseball player are very good about being upfront about what they're feeling, and it's not that like Justin Steele. He's lost trust in Justin Steele now because Justin didn't tell him that maybe exactly what was going on. If that's what happened, it's just again, baseball players are a lot more upfront about what they're feeling. He goes out there, Justin tells him he's not feeling it when he's throwing. It's nothing that bad, and so Ross he trusts that. And again, not that he's lost trust or anything, but it's just like, okay, my player's telling me what he's feeling. With the trainer, it's not me making the call, it's the trainer making the call, and they feel comfortable letting him go back out there for the third inning. And that's when Justin even said that it's whatever started was between the second and the third.
Right.
So it wasn't like it was the first two innings and they're kind of leaving him out there. It was like something happened, they put it on Ross's radar, the trainers put it on his radar. That's when they gave him word, but they were like, okay, like they felt comfortable letting him go out there again. So he went out there, they got one out, and then that's when they went and had the meeting on the mound. So in that sense, it must have been Justin kind of still telling him, like, I'm not. I think Ross had said, like he said, he wasn't feeling any tingle or any like kind of shot down the arm, and especially not when he was pitching. And so
as a guy who's had Tommy John, he might know more better than I would what it feels like.
Yeah, exactly. So So I think part of it is trusting. Like, yes, you should know your players, but you also have that trust that if a guy's really, really hurting, he'll tell you that he's really hurting. Like, he's not.
Yeah.
I think
trust.
I think Ross also trusts that his players are smart enough to know, especially a guy like Justin that is very important to the team, should know, like, if he's really hurting, that he'll tell him. So I think I don't know if the decision was handled right or wrong, because I don't know how exactly Justin was feeling at the time. But then Ross, said as soon as he came out, that he said that it went out. He let him go out there, let him finish, but his radar was way up, and then just continuing to watch him pitch and to watch him kind of do a little
keep through the flexing
thing.
Continued,
and I think it was a good thing that was it 4 pitches to get out of the inning after that. Like, it didn't take him any more pitches, but like right there, even in those 4 pitches, it seemed like Ross just, like, his own opinion flipped. Like, even though the trainers felt comfortable letting him go out there, he just really didn't want to risk anything else and just got him out of there. So go ahead.
My thing is just like if it's on the radar, like that to me, and it again,
I'm one more batter.
I'm not in there, but again, a guy who's had had surgery before, and just too valuable to you in a game that is of no consequence, right? Like, every game matters, but like this isn't the World Series, right? Like, this is not a game where you're risking life or death. If it was on your radar to be watching for something, I would have taken him out and just said, listen, like, let's just get you out, go take a rest. We'll take a look if we have to, but that's it. As a fan who doesn't know all the information, if I'm hearing that it was on their radar, I don't like that it went any further than that. I don't like that the medical staff was comfortable letting him go back out there. Like, and I hope this is all nothing. I hope he's fine. Yeah. And he misses
said maybe dehydration,
one start.
Boy.
Hopefully that's the case. But as we were talking about yesterday, and we don't have to go down this long winding road, and the positions and the medical staff have changed. Like, this organization for the last several years has done stuff that to a casual observer doesn't make a lot of sense. Guys play through stuff all the time and then hit the IL, right? They sit on the bench and then hit the IL, 9 or 10 days later. My favorite example was Ben Zobrist playing with an obviously hurt wrist, and his OPS dropped, I think, like 200 points in like a month or so span. And then they were like, yeah, he told us later that it was really painful for him when he batted from this side. It's like, shouldn't you guys know that? Like, anyway,
that's one other thing is, like, maybe you should know it, but also, like, you can't really feel for your players, right?
Yeah.
If they're not telling you something's bothering them, you can't just like feel that for them,
Absolutely.
You might see them like have a little twitch or something, and you ask them about it, it's like, oh no, it's nothing, it's it's whatever. Like, sometimes that happens, and like, you can only, as a training staff, as a front office, as a coaching staff, you can only go with the information the guy tells you. You can't feel an injury. You can't feel soreness or tightness or throbbing for they can't feel it for Justin Steele if he's not telling them exactly what he's feeling. And again, I think that also goes to the point that, like, David Ross trusts his players. And I think he still does. I don't think this affects his trust in Justin Steele, but he trusts his players to let him know what's going on. But then on the flip side, Justin Steele's a competitor, and maybe he doesn't want to come out of the game in the 3rd inning. Like, he wants to go out there and pitch, and then it gets to the point where Ross's radar is just it's too much. Like, I don't want to risk it anymore. Then we already just did, right?
Yeah.
So
it's very nuanced. So that's why I don't have a super strong opinion on it. But it's just, if like it was on their radar, I wish they would have. For someone as important as Steele, I would always prefer they err on the side of extreme caution, just because
totally
this franchise cannot afford him to have a significant injury. And if you could have, in any sense, prevented it, then I wish they would have. But we don't know if that even would have worked. So
I'd argue within in recent years at least that they've been better about avoiding, like, the Ben Zobers, the Chris Bryant nagging injuries where they could have just put him on the IL, but they let him play
He's on the
through
IL
it.
again, by the way.
Is he really?
Well, like, to that point, real quick, I'll let you finish. But it's also like, even this season, Nico and Cody, right?
Yeah.
Like, they didn't play him the next 3 days. Like, they gave him the 3 games off or whatever just to see if a few days off will help him. And then they put him on the IL, which people don't like, whatever. That's the point of being able to backdate it is they had.
It goes retroactive to when they got hurt.
These guys felt something, but they're like, okay, maybe a few days they'll feel better and we can play him. They weren't just like putting him right back in the lineup.
Yeah.
They like gave him the days.
To play devil's advocate to it is that I think in recent years they have been better about it based off what we can, what me and Corey and Luke can see, or at least me and Corey. So
quick doomsday. We all want Justin. I want Steele to be ready to throw next week.
Well, you asked the Brennan question. You're the negative energy today.
He's easily one of the 3 most valuable players on your team.
Easily.
Yes.
Easily, like to the future of the franchise.
Well, I think his season this year so far has been like the most important of anyone really. On Marcus Stroman's had a great season. Dansby's had people have been underrating his season. I think he's had a good season.
But his repeating last year.
Yeah, his doing what he did last year as far as the pitching side goes, like that's been the most important for what the Cubs need for like their immediate future and even kind of long-term future as well.
So worst case scenario, something's not good. Knock on wood, it doesn't happen. But because we're a podcast, we can hypothetical all we want. If it's a serious elbow injury or down the line becomes a serious elbow injury, like develops into that, you have 2 choices in my mind as an organization. Number one, you get him right as fast as you can, but you either, A, sign Marcus Stroman to an extension the next day for the future of the team, or B, you reset the whole damn thing and you trade Marcus Stroman while his stock is as high as possible. What would you do if Steele's actually hurt?
It's exactly as you laid it out. That would be the decision they would have to make. I mean, obviously, I would be in the position of extending him because, as you put it, the decision is either you extend him and you find a way to work around however long Steele may be out, if that's the case. Again, hoping it's not. If you proceed to the deadline and you're not winning games and you do end up trading Stroman, you have no frontline pitching. 0. None. Zip.
Unless someone emerges.
You would need someone to emerge, yes.
You're banking on some young guys who still have a lot of developing
and some
to
of
do
them haven't even thrown a pitch at the major league level, right? So you would have to be making that decision. If you traded Stroman, you have no frontline pitching.
Let's hope it doesn't
and by default, unless Ben Brown comes up in the second half and proves he's ready to be in the rotation, and they give Hayden another shot, or whatever, right? Different things. You don't have the ability to rework an entire rotation in one off season, so you would have to be making those moves. Now, obviously, you hope that Jamison Tyone improves. Last start was better, still not great, but hopefully he trends the right direction. But as we saw last year, like Hayden Wesneski was great, and we all wanted him to be a part of the rotation. It takes time. It's a process, right? So even if Ben Brown or some of these other guys came up and were lights out, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're ready to be a full-time member of the rotation next year and give you 30 starts, 180 innings. So in that scenario, you have to re-sign Marcus Stroman because you need someone you can rely on to do just that. Start 30-plus games, 180, 200-plus innings, and actually be a top-of-the-line starter. Otherwise, you wouldn't have one. So by default, you are pushing, as you said, that timeline backwards. I don't see any other way around it.
I'm a worrier. I'm a big worrier.
You put the Steele thing to the side. Trading Marcus Stroman just doesn't make any sense to me in general.
Right, that might be true regardless of Steele, the decision on Marcus Stroman. Absolutely.
And I said this on yesterday's pod, if the Cubs truly want to if they truly want to be more than just if this happens or this happens or this happens, maybe we make the wild card or maybe we can win this shitty division. If they want to be more than that, like they have said, then trading Mark Stroman doesn't make any sense. Whether Steele is okay or not, it just doesn't. In my opinion, we've all sat here and for the most part we're like, these next few years, especially when we first started 2022 in March, we were like, this 2022 is a exploring season. 2023 they signed off season or going to off season coming into this year. They signed Swanson, they extend Nico and Happ, and they made all these moves to show that hey, we care. We're trying to win games. I don't care how bad it gets. Like they still, considering some of the young guys they got coming up and all the money that they have, like to me it doesn't make a lot of sense to just completely sell off. If you trade Stroman, it's a sign that you're You're resetting. You're trying to do basically what you did this year, next year. And, like, I'm sorry, that's unacceptable.
When if you trade a guy who's been very open about, like, I want to stay here.
That's what I was going to say.
I want to stay here and be a part of what they're building. If you trade a guy like that who's pitching really well, who's pitching top tier starting pitcher right now so far through the first 2 months of the year, if you go ahead and trade him in 2 months, then yes, the optics of, like, at that point it's like you might as well trade Bellinger, you might as well trade Smiley or whoever it is, because you are trading. Yes, you're probably your best trade chip, but he's also a guy who's, like, could potentially be a part of this, like, short-term future of this team trying to get back to a playoff caliber level. And if you trade him, then you're punting this season, but you're giving away a guy who's been really good for you for most of his
It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me if you plan on being more than just, like, in the race in 2024.
So we all agree, let's just hope Justin Steele's okay. You don't want to see anybody get hurt, but I can't think of a player or a possible injury to a player on the Cubs that would concern me more than I'm concerned right now about him. So hopefully he's okay, and it's a big bunch of nothing, and it's just a little blip on the radar. Cody, tell us about the ComEd Energy Efficiency Program.
Luke, the ComEd Energy Efficiency Program is committed to helping families and businesses in the communities they serve, helping manage energy usage and lower energy bills now and into the future.
They offer a wide variety of incentives on lighting and other efficiency upgrades to commercial, industrial, public sector customers of all sizes. ComEd also offers facility assessments that can help find energy-saving opportunities, HVAC systems, commercial kitchen equipment, or industrial processes.
Ooh, how's it work?
Detailed assessment plan specific to your goals, your needs. In person or virtually, they can do this. Then within 3 to 4 weeks, customers get a report detailing energy efficiency projects they can work on right away. Each one will include an estimated energy savings, cost savings, project cost, potential incentives, and simple payback. If you own a business, don't wait on this. For energy saving tips, lighting incentives, or to schedule your free facility assessment, go to ComEd.com/poweringbiz.
Luke, did you say ComEd.com/poweringbiz?
That's it. Schedule it today.
You guys started talking about the ComEd efficiency program, and then I looked at our lights here in the studio, powered by ComEd, and I almost blinded myself looking into them. Now I put on my Shady Rays, and I can look right at them. I'm good. I'm good with my Shady Rays on. Take on the sun with gear built to last. Our friends at Shady Rays have you covered for the warm weather ahead with premium polarized shades at an affordable price. Shady Rays is an independent sunglasses company that offers a world-class product that's just as good as any expensive pair we've worn. They have durable frames and extremely clear optics for outdoor adventures. And that's not all. Shady Rays offers the most insane protection program in all of eyewear. Every pair of sunglasses is backed by lost and broken replacements. If you lose or break your pair, even on day one, they told us they will send you a brand new pair, no questions asked. Wear your Shady Rays of confidence because they have your back long after you purchase. Together with their customers, Shady Rays is providing much-needed support to nonprofit partners across the U.S. through Shady Rays Impact. From building play sets for pediatric cancer patients to providing young adults with MS the outdoor adventure of a lifetime, Shady Rays is making an impact in your community and others like it now and for years to come. If you don't love your Shady Rays, exchange for a new pair or return them for free within 30 days. There's no risk when you shop. Their team always has your back. And exclusively for our listeners, Shady Rays is giving out their best deal of the season. Go to ShadyRays.com and use code CHGO for 50% off 2+ pairs of polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself. The shades rated 5 stars by over 250,000 people. Love them.
They're
Thanks,
the best.
Brett says,
Looking
nice,
good,
Ryan.
Brian.
Thanks, appreciate it.
Yeah.
Very good. Was very good. Happy birthday to Carlos Zambrano, number 42. Not on the jersey. It's his 42nd birthday. How about that?
My favorite part of the Carlos Zambrano era was definitely whenever he threw that ball back into left field.
What about
the bucket of balls? First he threw the bucket
thrown
of balls,
out.
and then
he got thrown out, and then he threw the ball into the bleachers. Like, I know it was a bad moment. And he was definitely like trending down then, but like it's still my favorite.
Yeah. What about the no hitter that almost nobody got to see? Like, was it close to nobody being able to watch that one?
No hitter for sure.
Yeah. The call that Lynn Casper had for that is one of his best for sure.
The old water fountain and Gatorade machine.
Oh yeah.
I did tweet out that picture of Zambrano on Field of Dreams last year, and like everyone was like, "Hey, he looks like he put him in the rotation. He looks like he could help this team." So there's that.
He had a 1 27 WRC plus in 2008.
He was so fun to watch.
That is incredible. 4 homers. He'd be like the 3rd best hitter on the Cubs with those type of numbers.
He was Ohtani before Ohtani.
He loved hitting, man.
Only different.
Right.
Baby Shohei. Baby Shohei.
He's not baby anything. Carlos Zambrano. He was big Shohei.
I just love the energy the guy had. Like, I know that, like, you know, his biggest downfall was definitely his own emotions. So basically himself. Like, when things weren't going well, you knew that he wasn't doing well. But, man, when things were going well and he had that energy, man, he was so fun. He's far and away my favorite Cubs pitcher. Like, if I had to choose one, he was like, as much as I love Kerry Wood, Mark Pryor, John Lester, all the guys from 16 that helped that team win, like, Big Z is still number 1 for me. He encapsulates everything that I love about a baseball player.
When he was such a like, I think, underrated member of that 2003 team, because obviously that team is hallmarked by Wood and Pryor and what they were doing, and that was Zambrano's first full year as a starter. I think he had pitched in 30 games a year before, but not always as a starter. That year he started 32 games. He had a 3.1 ERA, 4.7 wins above replacement. And at that time in 2003, he would have been, 22? Incredible, right? And where that team goes and all of that. And, like, just for me, as someone who was 12, right, at the time, like, in my memory, that season is so much Kerry Wood, Mark Pryor, and deservedly so. But, like, then you go and, as I got older, you go and look at it and dig into those numbers. Like, he was a huge part of that team that almost won the pennant.
He was fun. He was just a lot of fun. Yes, he did almost fight Derek Lee.
Yeah. They should have never taken him out against the Diamondbacks. Oh, I'm still mad about it.
He did fight Michael Barrett.
16 years ago today.
16 years ago today, Michael Barrett punched AJ or punched Zambrano punched Barrett?
Zambrano punched Barrett.
16 years ago today.
I'm going to look that up. Now you got me confused.
Or is it the AJ punch 16 years ago?
No, that was
a couple weeks ago, right?
Zambrano punched Barrett 16 years ago today, yeah.
And the real damage was done in the clubhouse. The fight we saw in the dugout was not as bad as the fight that was done in the dugout, where players had to be, like, rushing back there.
I think we should – I can't remember if it was the same incident or not, but, like, I think we should have gotten, like, a piñata of a Gatorade cooler, each taking some swings at it with Cody's beer bat to celebrate, when Zambrano did that.
Birthday.
The Gatorade coolers, man, the fights with the Gatorade. Oh, God. He wasn't perfect, but, man, he's just awesome.
We stinks.
Stinks, yes.
That was my favorite Zambrano moment of all time. I wasn't happy with him when he took out the old drinking fountain in the old dugout, because it was the coldest water in the history of the world. I mean, it was outrageously cold to the point where, like, your teeth hurt. But it was so great on a hot day. You go down and, after a game, get a drink from that, and there he takes a bat to it. Come on, Z. All right, they faced, real quickly, the Padres, Angels, and Giants. 4 with the Padres, 3 with the Angels, 3 with the Giants. How tough is this road trip?
Well, listen, the
Padres are underachieving.
Yeah, Padres they haven't done a lot of anything
Don't
lately,
let them get right. We can't keep doing that. I don't want to be that team. I don't want to be the team that gets teams right. Please don't.
And they did win 2
We didn't let the Mets do that.
They did win 2 or 3 when San Diego came to beautiful historic Wrigley Field. So ideally, I mean, I'd take a split out of this, but Stroh's going to pitch in this series too. So, like, you feel good about at least one of them, and I think Smiley will be able to pitch in it as well. But
pretty much everyone that wasn't Steele is pitching in this series.
So obviously the start that Tyone will have will be up in the air. But like Corey said, we haven't, since it was a weekend game, we haven't really got to talk about Tyone's last start. But I thought that he pitched. It was probably the best appearance he had since, like, his 3rd start of the year against the Dodgers. So I'm hoping, like Corey said, that he builds off that. But I do think that the Padres are just really underachieving right now, and so like Corey said, it can't be a get right series for them. Like, take advantage of the fact that they're not playing well. I mean,
I think
we'll see.
The hardest part, and I believe I looked at this correctly, like, the hardest part of this trip is that it's consecutive, right? There's no off days while they're out there on the West. Historically, right? Like, it's a tough thing to go out there. You're playing in different time zones, different teams. And it's a weird spot, right? Because I think generally you go on a trip like this, you play 10 straight days on the West Coast. You feel like, as our pal Niren says in the chat, like 5-5, you take that, this team kind of needs more than that. Right? Yeah. Like, maybe not immediately, but again, like I'm reading on Twitter today, Jeff Passan is talking about the Cubs trading Stroman, trading Bellinger. It's not like we're like inventing that kind of dialogue out of thin air, right? Like Jed talked about it to you, Ryan. Mm-hmm. Like, this is a real conversation. So, you'd feel good about going 5-5 and not falling any worse, and really honestly going 5-5 for the next 10 days. They might gain 3 games in the NL Central, right, with the way things are going in that division. Yeah. But overall, like, this team just needs to play consistently better baseball. I know that sounds like an obvious thing to say, but even in that Rays series, for taking 2 or 3, the offense still struggled against some good Rays pitching, but still struggled and got huge pitching performances out of Marcus Stroman, Kyle Hendricks, Hayden Wisniewski in relief, etc. So they just need to start playing better baseball. They need to be winning games, and if they, that's the type of analysis I know the
offense wasn't there the first 2 games against the Rays, but like if they get that kind of pitching or anything close to that kind of pitching, and the way that they were able to manufacture the runs in those 2 games, you feel pretty good. I mean, again, the Rays held them down, but they're the Rays. But they were still able to get runs when they, outside of Nico hitting that homer, of course. But even yesterday,
power hitter now.
Even yesterday, despite the fact they lost that game, they manufactured some runs with runners in scoring position, and even with 2 outs yesterday. So I know, I'm still pissed about yesterday's game, but it was a game that you were like, wow, we haven't seen a lot of this in a while. I said on yesterday's show, they stole 2 bases in the first inning. Nico walks, he stole a base. Like, we hadn't seen a lot of that at all over the month of May. So it's a new month. Hopefully they got to get it going, man. And unlike what you said about the 5-5, like I'll take 5-5 because it's still early enough to where they don't absolutely have to win 10 out of 13 right away.
Yeah, absolutely.
I will take that. They've been so bad on the road. That's another thing. They got to play better on the road if they're going to be around 500, by the end of the month or anything. Just moving forward, they just simply have to play better on the road.
I'd like to see Steele get a good report from the doctor and the Cubs bunt less in the next couple of series as well. Thanks for coming in today, Corey. You guys have the next podcast live on Sunday.
And I believe we have a 4:30 start against the Padres, so we'll be on early evening.
All right.
Another late one.
Look forward to it.
I think me and Ryan are going to Iowa tomorrow.
Could be happening.
Look out, Cam Sanders. We didn't get to go last time. It's still kind of up in the air. I'm sorry that we didn't really get to give anyone ahead of notice. But
you'll tweet it out if you're going.
Yeah, I think we're going.
Follow us on Twitter.
So,
yeah, we got our
if you're out in Iowa,
friend of the chat, Gerard, was telling me he's going to be out there in San Diego, in Anaheim. I think the Cubs are lined up to see Shohei Ohtani. So, I don't know how that game is going to go, but what I do want, and maybe if the producers at Marquee are listening, maybe if Seiya goes to talk to him, maybe get a mic in there, maybe a camera over there, like. Seiya, you got to start doing some work, man. Like, we need it. So
Gerard,
you want a frontline starting pitcher, there he is.
There you
So.
go.
Gerard should, I know he's got gear. Make sure you wear one of our shirts, get a picture, tweet it at us. We'll definitely retweet it, and then probably look at it and smile a little bit because that's awesome.
That would be sweet if you wore the CHGO shirt.
Yeah.
Tweet it to us
at the game, man.
To everybody else.
Got to spread the word. There's plenty of Cubs fans out on the West Coast.
Thanks for checking out the CHGO Cubs Podcast presented by DraftKings, America's top-rated sportsbook. Download the app, use promo code CHGO, and until next time, of course, fly the W.